Monster City Madhouse, a year-round online store full of Halloween and classic horror shirts, with an emphasis on the vintage look. Use code SAVE10 for 10% off your order. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Free shipping and financing's available. Welcome back to Southern Ghost Stories. I am the American Haunt Historian, Alan Searcy. So I'm glad you guys are with me today. Got a fun show planned. So before we get right into things, hey, Christmas is right around the corner. December is here. Below the Trestle. You guys know my Pope Lit Goat Monster book I put out back in October. It's doing really well. Makes a great stocking stuffer. It fits right there perfectly in a stocking, in case you guys are wondering. The Resurrection of Knox Martin, my Frankenstein book, also makes a good stocking stuffer. And anyway, all the books, they're on Audible, they're on Kindle. I think if you have the unlimited plan, you can read them all for free on Kindle. Also, the podcast, hey, leave us a review on Spotify. Subscribe on Apple Podcast. Leave us a review, subscribe. I got a lot of fun stuff planned for later this year and also next year. I hope you're following me on Twitter, Alan Searcy on Twitter, Southern Ghost Stories on Instagram and Facebook. So last April, I went up north and I went to Wisconsin and spent a long weekend up there. And, you know, it's funny. Wisconsin, I enjoyed my time up there. It was like the food was great. The people were nice. The weather in April, it wasn't too cool. It was like being in the South. I mean, except the accents were a little bit different. But yeah, I enjoyed my time in Wisconsin and I got to poking around a little bit. And there's a lot of weird, wild stuff up there. Especially in Madison. If you guys know where the University of Wisconsin is, that it's not a little town, but it's that town, a lot of weird, wild stuff. So when you think about like true crime and serial killers, you don't think Madison, Wisconsin. But yeah, during my time there, I learned Madison, Wisconsin had a serial killer running around in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So the loss of an innocence in a college town, it defined that town in the 80s. So, yeah, Madison, Dane County, the whole area, it was just terrorized. When it first started happening, they called it the Mad City Murders. And it's just, you know, there's a killer running loose. I mean, what are you going to do? So, in 1968, there was a young lady named Christine Rothschild. She was a freshman there at the University of Wisconsin, and it was the first case. They found her brutally stabbed 14 times, and she appeared to be strangled with a cloth. And she was discovered outside of Sterling Hall, which is a building there on campus. It's wild because Christine had allegedly confided in a friend that she felt she'd been stalked by an older student. Supposedly he was a medical researcher and he had access to scalpels. So maybe he was the guy who stabbed her. I don't really know. The police did dig in, but no arrest was ever made. So the case went cold and just got forgotten about. Well, in 1976, Deborah Bennett, she was a 20-year-old young lady who had moved from Ridgeway to Madison. They say she was popular, good-natured. She was trusting, though probably a bit naive. And she was trying to, find herself in this larger city. Well, unfortunately, her remains were found on July 21st, 1976, in a field several miles from Cross Plains in Dane County, just west of Madison there. What's really kind of unsettling about all this, her body had been set on fire and left in a ditch. Trying to hide the body and burn it, that's awful. So 2 years later, 1978, Julianne Hall, she was an 18-year-old high school student who lived in the Madison area. And she's a regular, vibrant teenage girl. Well, she was last seen alive on the night of July 8th, 1978. She had been at a party in the town Wanaki. It's just north of Madison. She left the party on foot and she's walking home, but she never quite made it. Well, her remains, they were found on August 25th, 1978, a month and a half later. They found her in a shallow grave in a wooded area. When they found her, she'd been bludgeoned to death by a massive blow to the head. So, yeah, it's sad. The bodies are kind of racking up. Well, the following year, July Spearschneider, 1979. She was a 16-year-old young lady. She's a high school student. She had dropped out of school. I believe she was working. And March 1979, she left her family's home in Cottage Grove, just outside of Madison. And she just up and disappeared. Well, 2 years later, April 1981, a fisherman, he found her remains in a wooded, secluded area near the river in Staunton, just south of Madison. So unfortunately, because all the time that had gone by, the body had really decomposed, and they couldn't determine exactly what happened. But it's just another young lady in the Madison area that, come up dead. Well, Susan LeMahieu, she was 24. December 1979, she goes missing. And she was getting treatment there in Madison. I think she was sick. Well, April 1980, her nude body was found by a hiker out in the woods, in a marshland area, actually, in Dane County, near Wanaki, where one of the other bodies was found. And, the bodies keep piling up. 1980, Shirley Stewart, 17-year-old girl. She's working as a maid in Madison. January 1980, she just vanishes. There were no clues. It's winter time. It's hard to really investigate out in the woods when it's 20 degrees out there in Madison. Well, July 1981, a year and a half goes by. They find her in a secluded wood area near the shore of Lake Mendota, and her body, it also decomposed. So it's hard to really dig into what happened. You can't do an autopsy. Well, 1982, the bodies keep racking up, like I said. Donna Mars, she's a 20-year-old undergrad at University of Wisconsin. She's studying pre-med. She's murdered July 1982 and found stabbed to death outside Camp Randall Stadium. Camp Randall, that's where the Badgers play. And that's one of the most visible locations in the city, right there on the edge of campus. Well, the murderer's proximity to a major facility like Camp Randall, that kind of shook everybody up. If they're murdering people right there in front of the football stadium, what is going on? They said they heard her scream, but no one, by the time people got there, the killer was gone. Well, 2 years later, Janet Ratch, she was a 20-year-old business major there at Wisconsin. She went missing October 1984. Following month, 1984, they find her body in a wooded area in western Dane County. So they say this was likely a sexual assault. It's just awful. So who done it, right? Well, as all these murders are taking place, Henry Lee Lucas, he's arrested in Texas in 1983. And it's kind of like the peak national attention of these serial killings that are going on in Madison. Well, Henry Lee Lucas, he was like a transient, a petty criminal, and a convicted murderer. He was one of the most infamous and dangerous figures, I guess, during that time period. Well, he became the face of this huge scandal. After his arrest, he was granted unusual access and freedom to travel with Texas Rangers because he was claiming responsibility for hundreds of unsolved murders all over the country. So, what's going on with this? Well, Lucas, he was known to be a drifter, and he could have been in the Madison area when these killings were taking place. Started in 1968 all the way to 1984. And his known victims were known to be women. So it kind of matched the pattern there, right? Well, Dane County detectives, they're desperate for a breakthrough in this case. They travel to interview Lucas down there in Texas, and he fesses up. He claims that he was responsible for the Madison homicides, the murders, especially the first one, Christine Rothschild. Well, it's it's really sad because what happens is his admissions, his confessions, they're ultimately discredited. A lot of inconsistencies and contradictions. So what happened was Lucas was lying. He wanted better food. He wanted better treatment. He wanted to go to a better facility. If he's confessing these murders, he can go on trips with detectives to where the bodies are supposed to be. He can walk around the woods for a day and get out of the prison. So, yeah, he did this. He kind of led the investigators on a wild goose chase. But he didn't do this just in Wisconsin. He did it for other unsolved cases all across the country. Well, to this day, the murders there in Madison, they're not solved. So yeah, the capital city killings, it's awful, but it's wild to think this all went on in Madison, Wisconsin back in the 80s. You wouldn't think this. I could see New York City or Chicago, but Madison, come on. So there's also, it's not just a serial killer there on the campus. There's some ghost stories too, some really weird stuff going on. So you guys know I love the body snatch and the grave robbing. Well, Science Hall, it was once home to the University of Wisconsin's anatomy department. It was built in the late 80s, and all the way up until 1957, that's where cadavers were brought in and dissected. You know, the doctors have to have a steady stream of cadavers for their kids to chop up and learn and figure out the anatomy so they can go on and treat patients as they develop into doctors. Well, as this building goes on, lots of students come and go, and they're starting to talk. Hey, well, a couple years ago, I heard they were throwing feet over this wall. They were discarding them. Or, hey, there's bones over in this wall, in this part of the building. So it wasn't just a rumor. After the department moved out, the legends were kind of confirmed when human remains were discovered there in the building. Well, one of the weirdest finds they found, there's some students, and they found this, they're up in the attic, and they found this hidden hatch. So, I mean, if I was in a building that was built in the 1880s and I saw a hidden hatch, well, I'd go explore it too. So these kids are crawling around, and they find over in the corner, tucked away in this big jar, an embalmed human foot. And reportedly, it had 5 inches of ankle still attached to it. So if you find an ankle in a jar, it's going to be the ankle kind of cut off right there, just kind of like the foot is going to be stuck in the jar. But no, this ankle was attached to 5 inches of the bone there. It's like, how would you even do that? Would you just put the skeleton down there on a table and start sawing away so you can get the 5 inches of the bone and leave it attached to the ankle? I mean, just like the visual of that, I can't quite grasp it or get over it, really. So, but it wasn't just, the human foot. They said that the students who worked there would hear people walking around in the building at night, phantom footsteps, unexplained noises, and they always said that it was the spirits of the people who, like the guy who lost his foot, he was there looking in the building trying to find his foot they cut off of him. So, I'm sure the kids probably had a good time with those ghost stories. Well, speaking of body parts that kind of went unclaimed, so Bascom Hill was the first cemetery in the Madison area. 1837, 1846 was the first graveyard there. It was like a burial ground for the first white settlers of the new territory that had become Madison. It was the old burying ground where pioneers and figures like William Nelson and Samuel Warren, some notable people there in the community, were laid to rest. Well, as Madison develops, and the college is University of Wisconsin is established in 1848, the city decided to develop the hill and make it part of the campus there. Well, it was deemed unsuitable because there's a cemetery right there in the middle of it. So they said between 1846 and 1850, there was roughly 60 to 70 bodies interred on that hill. Well, they had to disinter them. They had to dig them up. And they had to relocate them over to Forest Hill Cemetery on the city's west side. Well, when the excavations were taking place, in the early 1900s, they finalized everything. They cleared off the terrace for the Lincoln statue. When they were clearing the area, they find 2 grave markers, 2 headstones. One is Samuel Warren, and the other is William Nelson. What's wild is Samuel Warren, when he died, he was struck by lightning, 1838. And I was reading that, and it's shocking. Oh, come on. As Larry the Cable Guy once said, that's funny. I don't care who you are. Get it? Shocking, struck by lightning? Come on, rough crowd. Anyway, but now today, Bascom Hill is kind of the iconic sloping lawn that leads to Bascom Hall, which is the university's main administrative building at the summit. But it's just wild. There's two guys just buried there near the Abraham Lincoln statue there on campus. And, they just kind of leave them there, and they're not going to move them. So they say that it's weird because there's two guys that are there, but there's rumblings that maybe there's more that weren't buried. Usually if you had paupers that were buried, they couldn't afford a stone, or if they did, they had like a wooden grave marker. And, as the years go by, the elements are going to chew up those wooden grave markers. And they say there's a ghost of a young woman, like a white figure, a lady in white. They've seen her walking the hill. They say she's sobbing. They pick up she's very sad. One young lady who went to school there, she was up on the hill. She claimed to see two heads, like one old, one young man, peeking out behind the Lincoln statue there on campus. And they were like smiling, just really kind of creepy. So they call them the smiling heads. Yeah, I mean, it's still believed there could be dozens of bodies. No one really knows. It's just wild that, they have, progress is going to take place. They're going to have to remove cemeteries. I get it, but sometimes they don't really get them all. So the theater on campus, the Wisconsin Union Theater. You guys heard about a ghost light? They say that a ghost light, it's like a single bulb that's left on an empty stage. And they don't do it just, in Wisconsin. They do, I think, at the Grand Ole Opry. All the theaters, it's like the ghost light. It's kind of what they do. They leave it lit to accommodate the spirits or to appease the spirits that are inside the theaters. Well, supposedly, the theater is very haunted. They say in 1939, there was a guy who was helping to build it. He was an unnamed construction worker. He was on a scaffold working on something. He lost his footing and he fell. He broke his neck and he passed away. They call him the foreman. And they say that people in the building, they kind of pick up a presence on like the upper rigging, the catwalks, the backstage fly space above the stage. They hear random noises, like the clang of a tool. They'll hear distant footsteps. Just a cold breeze, like these people, the students there, they'll be up there working on the rigging, and all of a sudden this cold breeze just rushes right through them. And they say it's the spirit of the guy who passed away who was working on the building. Well, there's another ghost there, and he wasn't a construction worker. He was part of the symphony. So Samuel Segal, and this is documented, right? On March 12, 1950, during a performance of the Minneapolis Symphony Orchestra, the timpanist Samuel Segal, he suffered a sudden and fatal heart attack. And the tragedy occurred right in the middle of a piece. The symphony is playing this song, and Segal just has a heart attack and falls out on the floor. Well, what's wild is the orchestra, they kept playing until the piece was over. I guess then they broke for an intermission. They realized what's going on. I mean, but these guys are professionals. I guess they got to finish the song. I'm not sure the code these guys live by. If the timpanist falls out, you got to keep playing. Who knows? But anyway, Segal's body was quickly and quietly dragged backstage to avoid disrupting the concert. And by all accounts, they went back and they finished their show. So kudos to them, I suppose. But they say that Segal's spirit's also tied there to the Union Theater. And he's also responsible for the occasional, like a disembodied drum beat, or like the off drum beat, like the middle of a show. They say they feel like a man. They feel a presence in the orchestra pit. They've seen shadows around there, and they think that's the spirit of Mr. Segal, who passed away during his performance. But there's another theater in Wisconsin, in Madison. It's not on campus. The Majestic Theater. It's actually Madison's oldest operating theater. It was opened in 1906. That was the golden age of live entertainment all across the country. That's back when vaudeville was a thing, a form of popular entertainment where various acts like musicians, dancers, comedians, magicians, these short plays would kind of tour the country. And the Majestic was a key stop in that region. They drew huge crowds in the capital city there. Well, as entertainment evolved, the Majestic adapted. It became a silent film theater, 1910s, 1920s. So they say that what is haunting the building, they call it like a shadow man, highly unusual and kind of disturbing, dark figure. He's a dark, amorphous figure, like a patch of absolute darkness. And they say he's kind of tall and looming. They say he's reported to have unnaturally long, thin arms that appear to hang down close to the floor. And that's pretty creepy right there. They've seen him mostly on the right side of the balcony. They kind of catch him in their periphery, and he'll kind of grow larger. And like when they turn around, he vanishes. So they say they hear voices. Sometimes the performers do. They'll feel their coats being tugged on or pulled. Their clothing's like it's snagged on something. When they turn around, there's nothing there. So yeah, all kinds of weird, wild stuff in Madison. Madison, it's the capital city of Wisconsin. They have the campus there, but there's a lot of just weird, wild history. So I'm looking forward. I think I'm going back up there, up north, I think next spring. And I may do some more poking around. I think I'm going to Eau Claire this time. But yeah, you never know. So hey, guys, Christmas is already around the corner. I want to make sure you guys know Monster City Madhouse. Every day is Halloween. They specialize in premium Halloween and classic horror shirts with a vintage look. Now you can save 10% off your order. Use code SAVE10, and it's monstercitymadhouse.com. Free shipping, and get this, they got financing available as well. So also, once you get your Monster City Madhouse gear for Christmas to put under the tree, go get a book. Hexed, the Voodoo Doctor in 1940s. Go to Amazon, type in Hexed, Alan Searcy, it'll pop up. It's got some good reviews. Yeah, wrap that, stick it under your tree, put it in your stocking. Somebody's going to give you a big hug when they get it. So make sure you're following us on Instagram, on Facebook, Southern Ghost Stories. Look us up. I plan on doing a Q&A here in a few weeks. I've been doing those. I get a lot of questions. I tour the country year round. I'm always somewhere. I did a lot of time in Kentucky back in October, but I'm in Tennessee. I'll be in Alabama, Wisconsin, Florida. I kind of get around, do a lot of shows, talk to a lot of people. But yeah, if you want to ask me a question about a certain haunted place or grave robbing, Frankenstein story, whatever, send me a question. Southern Ghost Stories Instagram, on Facebook, and leave a review on Spotify. Subscribe to us on Amazon Podcast. I appreciate all the help you guys give me, and it's a lot of fun. I love doing these shows for you. So next week I'm gonna do something. We're gonna head back south. We're gonna go to Houston, Texas, for some fun ghost stories. And I found one of the weirdest, most true crime stories I ever found. I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. So yeah, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.